Hey there, great to see you here on Cinema Recap. Thanks for joining us. Today we'll take a look at that 2012 comedy drama called That's My Boy. Spoilers ahead. Our story begins in 1984, where 13-year-old Donnie Berger is infatuated with his math teacher, Miss McGarrigle. He asks her out on a date, and she responds by giving him a month's worth of detention.
And that's cute, but I am your teacher, not your girlfriend.
After school during detention, we find out that Miss McGarrigle had a crush on Donnie too. And so the two proceed to have a fling. It's creepy, gross, and very much illegal, which really sets the tone for the rest of the movie. Now one day during presidential elections at the school auditorium, Mary and Donnie are caught. Mary rushes off stage, but the school crowd cheers for Donnie. Obviously, because Donnie's a minor, this is grounds for jail time. In court, when Mary stands to plead guilty, we find out that she's pregnant. She shows no remorse for fraternizing with a teenage boy, and is thus sentenced to 30 years in Massachusetts Women's Penitentiary. Furthermore, the court grants custody of the unborn child to Donnie's father until Donnie turns 18, after which he'll assume full custody.
Miss McGarrigle, I'll never stop loving you!
Mary's sent off to jail while Donnie becomes a teen sensation nationwide, appearing on talk shows, movies, and even a sitcom. Now the years pass by and we come to the present, where Donnie Berger's 26 years old and has blown through all the money. He meets with a lawyer who informs him that he might get like 3 years in prison for tax evasion. Now the good news is that if he pays the balance off by the end of the week, they'll suspend his sentence. The bad news is that Donnie hasn't paid taxes since 1994, totaling up to $43,000. Now Donnie responds by throwing a chair into the wall. Apparently he has only $28 to his name. The lawyer asks if he can borrow money from his kid, but Donnie explains that they haven't spoken in years. Not only that, he doesn't even know where Han Solo Berger is. That's right, he named his child Han Solo.
Coolest name in the world, right?
So as Donnie's looking wistfully out the window, the scene shifts to a swanky apartment in a high-rise building, where Han Solo seems to be doing pretty well for himself. He's even getting married, and his wife-to-be Jamie eagerly shows him that their marriage is making front-page news. Despite his obvious success, Han doesn't look to be doing all that good emotionally. He takes a lot of anti-anxiety medication and even keeps a pair of extra underwear in his pocket just in case. We come back to Donnie, who's come to his favorite place to seek wise counsel, the strip club. He stresses about the incoming legal case with his close friend, a stripper named Champale, when he spots his son's wedding announcement in the newspaper. Apparently, Han Solo, who has since changed his name to Todd Peterson, is now a big-shot hedge fund manager. The newspaper goes on to say that Todd was orphaned at age 9 when both of his parents died in an explosion. Meanwhile, Todd takes his in-laws and future wife to a summer home owned by his boss, Mr. Spiro, who's allowing them to stay there for the weekend.
It's so amazing that you're letting us all stay here. Seriously, thank you so much.
They're all conversing in the dining room when Jamie's brother, a soldier named Chad, arrives. Now Chad instantly hates Todd, remarking that if he ever hurts Jamie, he'll kill him. Now while Todd's living it up, Donnie heads down to the office of Randy Morgan, a talk show host that used to interview him frequently, back when Donnie was young and people actually cared about him. The receptionist coolly informs him that Randy's on vacation, but she's obviously lying. Vanilla Ice, however, is allowed inside. Many of you are not old enough to remember probably, but he was big back in the 90s. Apparently, Donnie and Vanilla used to be best friends, until Donnie accidentally slept with his mother. Donnie tries to get some money out of Mr. Ice, but we find out that Vanilla doesn't have any, having resorted to working in fast food to make ends meet. Basically, the only thing Vanilla Ice can do for Donnie is get him a discount on some barbecue sauce. Donnie jokes that he'll ask Ice's mother for the money, and Ice lunges. The two crash into a table, and the commotion gets the attention of Randy Morgan, who invites Donnie into his dressing room. Now backstage, Randy tells Donnie what we already know. Just like Vanilla, he's old news. And the most he can do for him is to film a small segment on 80s train wrecks. Instead, Donnie gets the idea of doing a reunion piece with the teacher he got pregnant, Miss McGarrigle, live from the women's prison she still serves time at. Randy isn't sold on the idea, but finds it interesting that Donnie's son is doing good for himself. He offers a deal, explaining that both Donnie and his son have to go up to the women's prison this weekend for Randy to feature it on his show. If he manages that, then Randy will give him $50,000 to pay off that IRS fine.
I will give you 50 grand in cash.
Now Donnie finds Todd's location and ends up at the summer house where Todd is forced to introduce Donnie as an old friend, not his father, as his parents are supposed to be super dead. Donnie acts as expected, unfortunately giving Jamie an inappropriate wedding gift and flirting with Mr. Spiru's elderly mother. But much to Todd's chagrin, the family is charmed and allows him to stay for the weekend. He feeds him a ridiculous story about saving Todd from a train accident, and they just eat that up.
Can't believe I've never heard that story before.
Now alone upstairs, Donnie unpacks his garbage bag full of stuff, nunchucks, beer cans, condoms, the usual, while Todd berates him. Donnie lies, explaining that Miss McGarrigle is sick and wants to see them both at the prison this weekend, on Saturday, the day before Todd's wedding. Todd refuses for obvious reasons, and Donnie asks why he's so hateful. To no one's surprise, Donnie was a horrible parent, and Todd had to basically raise himself. He can't ride a bike or swim, and is even a diabetic because Donnie let him eat cake for breakfast every day. Now Jamie announces that guests are arriving, so Todd bribes his father into wearing a tie before heading downstairs. While Donnie dresses, Todd and Jamie chat with Mr. Spiru. We figure out that Spiru thinks of Todd as the son he never had, especially considering that Todd's father died in an explosion. Now meanwhile, the dead father in question overhears the conversation and decides to join in, much to Todd's horror. Somehow, Spiru and Donnie hit it off with their shared love of outdated slang. Donnie quickly becomes the center of the party, telling the fake story of how he saved Todd from the train over and over again while using his belt to pop beer cans open. Todd tries to get Donnie to excuse himself, but before he can, someone recognizes Donnie as the kid who got his teacher pregnant. Everyone in the older crowd remembers him, and he's even asked for an autograph. Who knew committing a felony would make you so famous? Todd's best man Phil gives the position over to Donnie, who persuades everyone to play a game of baseball in the backyard.
Alright guys, let's see what we got out
Please
there.
don't hit us. Please don't hit us. Please don't hit us.
Everyone's excited, apart from Todd, who's so horrible at sports that a 3-year-old shows him up. So afterwards, Donnie's enjoying himself in the hot tub when his friends at the strip club ring him up. Apparently, Donnie's show is airing on TV, but the royalties that he receives are negligible, certainly not enough to pay his IRS fine. The strippers ask if Todd has agreed to meet with his mother on Saturday, but Donnie confesses that he hasn't really discussed the particulars of that quite yet. So when he hangs up, he overhears Jamie yelling at Todd, and he follows the sound to Todd, who's showering in the bathroom while wearing swimming trunks. Not only does he shower with trunks on, he can't even take his shirt off in front of other people because Donnie made him a huge back tattoo in 3rd grade. Before we go on, like the video, smash the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to get that full day of good luck. Well, Donnie thinks that's hilarious and even shows off his own back tattoo. But the two grown men proceed to get into a tickle fight and are interrupted by a slightly tipsy Chad. Embarrassed to admit to a tickle fight, Todd explains that they were just wrestling. But now Chad wants to join in, stripping off his clothes and lunging for Todd. He's still angry that Todd's marrying his sister and doesn't stop choking him even after he's tapping out, so Donnie hits him over the head with a bottle.
How am I the fucking bad guy right now?
As they get ready for bed that night, Todd's explaining that Chad simply passed out from drinking too much. Jamie tries on her wedding dress in front of him, and as she stares at herself in the mirror, she confesses that she doesn't like Donnie very much, considering him trailer parky. We find out that Donnie has written a horrible little memoir called Head in the Class. But while the contents of the book are ridiculous, there's an epigraph on the first page dedicated to Han Solo that's actually pretty sweet, and it ends up making Todd a little emotional. The next morning, the family heads out to see the wedding venue and meet with the priest. Donnie, as the new best man, is there as well. The priest does get into a little argument with Todd, but instead of meekly backing away like usual, Todd argues back, just as Donnie recommended earlier that day.
I'd like to show you the garden for a minute.
Thus, the priest escorts him out and punches Todd directly in the face, sending him flying to the grass. He takes off his shirt, revealing a surprising set of muscles for an old guy, and goes into round 2. Todd gets one good punch in, and the priest starts chanting in Latin. It's really creepy.
You know what? Maybe just run.
Donnie wields his beer bottle once again, hitting the priest over the head and knocking him out. So the family's kicked out of church, leaving Jamie and Todd without a wedding venue. Everyone blames Todd, even though, in all fairness, the priest punched first. Even Todd blames himself for listening to Donnie and arguing back. Now, seeing how upset his son is, Donnie uses his gift for storytelling to make up a sob story about Todd's alleged dead father, explaining that memories of his father's open casket funeral has made Todd wary of churches. Now the story's ridiculous, but the family all end up believing it and sympathize with Todd instead of turning against him. Nice. Todd goes with it, and Donnie suggests that they hold a venue in the backyard of the summer house right next to the beach. So with just a few days until the wedding, the family separates for the bachelor parties. Donnie, of course, wants to plan it, but Phil already has it covered and takes them all to a spa that he discovered on an Oprah magazine article. The bachelor package includes a massage, facials, pedicures, and even a lavender scrub to take home. Donnie loses it, unable to process a bachelor party that doesn't involve alcohol and strippers. He eventually convinces the group, and they all head to his favorite strip club / omelet bar. Champale greets him at the door, and they all have a great time, apart from Todd, who looks like he'd rather be at the spa. And while she's performing, her daughter, Bree, chats with Todd. Now, Bree knows that he's Han Solo, but promises to keep Todd's secret safe. They take shots together, and Todd eventually loosens up. After the party, the rest of the guys are sent home while Donnie and Todd have some alone time to talk.
Give me a gift?
Donnie gives Todd an earring, a gift passed on from Miss McGarrigle, and although Todd doesn't have earrings, he's drunk enough to let Donnie pierce his. Afterwards, the two head out to meet Uncle Vanny, otherwise known as Vanilla Ice. True to word, he works at a restaurant frying chicken nuggets, and Donnie apologizes for the incident with his mother. Vanilla pulls out a bong and the three cavort around the city, getting kicked out of ice rinks, grocery stores, and bowling alleys. Donnie teaches Todd how to ride a bike, and even persuades him to get rid of the extra underwear he keeps in his pocket at all times.
It's a classic night.
Vanilla ends up passed out in a patch of grass, leaving Donnie and Todd alone on the porch of the summer house, where they hug for the first time. Todd agrees to go to prison the next morning, but Donnie convinces Todd that it's been canceled. Todd stumbles into Jamie's room, where he mistakes the wedding dress on display for his fiancée. The next morning, we find out that he's puked all over it. So Jamie's furious, and it gets even worse when Vanilla Ice barges into the room slightly tipsy and holding a gun. She tells Todd that she's going to Pilates, and when she comes back, that dress better be clean. So Todd's off to the dry cleaners. Donnie's cooking up pancakes for the family. Now Todd calls and tells Donnie that he's decided to see his mom after all. So Donnie rushes over to stop him before Randy Morgan and his crew show up. But he gets distracted when McGarrigle comes out for visiting hours. He gets so caught up in the conversation with Mary that he doesn't even remember Randy until a microphone dangles above him. Todd immediately puts the facts together, realizing that Randy's show is the only reason Donnie came back into his life.
You go after him, Donnie, and you take care of our son.
They fight as those cameras are rolling, and Todd gets tased by a guard, causing him to soil his pants. Unfortunately, Todd stopped bringing his extra underwear around, so he runs away clutching the back of his pants to hide the stain. He also refuses to sign a release form, so Donnie can't get any of the money that Randy promised. With Todd gone, Donnie heads to the summer house to pack up his stuff and leave. However, he hears Jamie giggling over the phone with somebody named Steve. Realizing that Jamie may potentially be cheating on her fiancé with Steve Spiru, Donnie decides that he can't leave after all. So that night, the day before the wedding, Spiru declares to Todd that he's chosen him to be a partner in their firm. However, Donnie suddenly appears and reveals what he heard on the phone, and Jamie explains that she was actually talking to Steve Goldstein, a wedding reporter for a newspaper. Donnie gets access to the room Jamie's staying in to apologize to her, but at her door, he hears noises and gets suspicious. He creeps in through the window and finds Jamie in bed with her brother Chad of all people. It's so gross that even Donnie throws up, and he takes a photo of the two of them as evidence. But Jamie offers to pay Donnie to keep this new discovery a secret. Ugh. We cut to the next morning. It's the day of the wedding, and we find out that Donnie has taken Jamie up on her deal, getting $50,000 in exchange for keeping his mouth shut. Despite being saved from prison, he still feels guilty, and that feeling only gets worse when he opens a present Todd gave him shortly after the bachelor party. Resolved to tell the truth, Donnie grabs a ride from Vanilla, and together they race to the wedding. Meanwhile, the priest from earlier appears, asking Todd to forgive him, and Todd accepts the apology, mostly because he doesn't want to get punched in the face again. As Jamie's walking down the aisle, Donnie and Vanilla ditch the car and run the rest of the way. And just before Todd says "I do," Donnie rushes in and objects, explaining that Todd doesn't truly love Jamie, and in doing so, reveals that Todd is his biological son. Everyone gasps, and Todd admits that it's true.
My parents didn't die in an explosion.
Jamie's then forced to admit in Todd's ear that she's been sleeping with her brother. Understandably, Todd's grossed out, and he accidentally says it out loud to the whole crowd. Jamie begs Todd to continue the wedding, but Todd refuses, and once he starts talking, he doesn't stop. He tells everyone about his giant back tattoo and even quits his job. And while he talks, Jamie grabs a knife from the cake table and tries to attack Donnie, but he, as always, has a beer bottle in his hand and knocks her down with it. Then Chad tries to tackle Donnie, but Todd comes to the rescue and knocks him out with a beer bottle too. And now with this whole wedding business out of the way, Donnie and Todd head to the strip club to celebrate. And that's how it ended. What a ride. Thanks for chilling with us on That's My Boy, produced by Columbia Pictures in 2012, starring Adam Sandler, Andy Samberg, and Leighton Meester. So what'd you think about Sandler's character? Charming or rude and trailer parky? Why don't you let us know in those comments with the hashtag Cinema Recap. Thanks for watching. Till next time.